let's see. Recording, right? Okay. So today our discussion is distributed tracing. Distributed tracing in microservices. In microservices, distributed tracing in mixroservices. Fine. Now guys, so just tell me guys, in project how many microservices exist now? How many microservices exist now? One or multiple? Multiple, right? Good. One person is there. If the person is responding, that is enough for me to deliver the subject, guys. Okay, that is enough for me to deliver the subject. So now fine, good. I appreciated everyone whoever there in the session, guys. Okay, you guys are really serious about your life as well as what. Just only one things, guys. Okay, counting. Don't bother about the counting number. Single person only. Like what? Just see. What we can say. Only one person was there. Neeraj. Someone is there, right? Who taken the gold medalist. Neeraj, what is it? Neeraj Chopra?
Neeraj Chopra.
Yeah, Neeraj Chopra, right?
Yes.
So just what? Yes, only the single person only, right? He's doing the hard work. No one is know that, right? But still, but he's bringing the gold medal, na?
Right.
Yeah. So just think about yourself. Don't think about that. What is that? Bheed, you know, in Hindi. Don't bother about the bheed, right? Like what crowd? Just like a thing. Yeah.
When you are there in the session, that's enough for us.
Yeah, just you know, the thing is just bother about yourself. If one person is there, if I'm not leaving the session, just see, I'm not discouraging myself. Even in my session 20 member also joining, then also I'm delivering the same content only. If one person is there, 5 member, 4 member, 3 member also there, I'm not distracting my path, right? I'm not distracting my path because I know the birth of the subject as well as what is the benefit about this subject. Everything I know that. Even so, because of that, so don't distract yourself, guys. Okay, don't distract yourself. And just I'm challenging and I'm promising you guys, if you guys are learning my subject, right, no need to pay single rupees about microservices, Spring Boot, Spring framework also anywhere. That is the enough. That is the real time things you are getting. That is the like what, even no need to waste your time from the any institution, guys. Because of that this subject only I'm cracking like this interview. Yeah, distributed tracing, right, guys? So in just only one question, guys. Okay, in our project, right, a question is what, our question is what, question is what, question in project how many microservices are there existing? Multiple, right? Multiple microservices is there. Multiple, right?
Yes, sir.
Multiple microservices is there. Okay, guys. So now if we request, then how many microservices is executing? If we are requesting, right? If we are requesting, just assume that we are making the request to like what, in our application only one microservices will execute, or multiple microservices can be execute? Come on, multiple microservices also can. It's not meaning that only one microservices will give the response, na? Come on.
Yes,
based on the just assume that if our design is like that, right? So we are making the request to whom? First controller, right? Controller is requesting to what? Our payment microservices, right? payment microservices. After then transaction microservices also is there. Then what will happen? Our transaction microservices will execute. After then we are getting the response. Now come on, yaar.
Correct, Ravi. Right.
So the question is, our question is what? If we are requesting, or if we are request, then what is that? Then how many microservices are execute, right? Answer is what? Answer is multiple, right? Multiple. What is that? Based on what? Design, right?
Yeah.
Based on design, right?
Yes,
Based on design, or what is that concept? Based on design, or what concept? Just assume that, right? So we are making the request, right? Here what we are doing now? Request is going now. Request is going to 1 minute. Request is going to one microservice. We are making the request to whom? One microservices, right? One microservices, right? After then what? After then again this microservices need, what is that? Help of what? Just assume that last time only, right? So this microservices interacting with what? This microservices interacting with what? Fin client, right? Fin client, come on.
yes, sir.
Fin client.
Yes,
After then what? After then this fin client is making the request to whom? Microservices to, or not? Just we saw that last time we did experiment intra communication.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Microservices 2, right? Microservices 2. Just here, what is that? Microservices 1, microservices 2. After then what is that? After then what? Load balancer is working. Just assume that load balancer request is going to whom? Load balancer, right? Request is going to whom? Load balancer, right? Load balancer. After then what? If need, right? If need, then load balancer will interact with what? Microservices 3 again, right? Microservices 3. Microservices 3, right? Microservices 3. After then what is that? After then again it will interact with what? Again it will interact with what? Microservices 2. Microservices 2, right? Microservices 2. Microservices 2, right? Microservices 2. After then what? Then what we are getting now? Then we are getting the response. Finally we are getting the response, guys. Okay, finally we are getting the response now. Big picture is there behind this one, guys. Okay, because of that I'm explaining now. Okay, so here what will happen now? Request, right? Means we are getting the response. We are getting then response, right? Here what we are doing now? Here we are making the request. We are making the request now. Fine, guys. So now if assume that in between, right? In between, if any microservices is failing, right? What is the problem? Because of that this microservices is failing. How we can trace it? Right? How we can find the problem is there in which microservices? After then if total execution is happening, how we will find it? This execution time is how much time this execution is taking, how much time this execution is taking, right? After
Yes,
then
sir.
what? In which order? If we want to trace, right? If we want to trace this microservices order, in which order this microservices is executing, right? The first, what is that? Microservices 1, fin client, microservices 2, load balancer, microservices 3, microservices 4, then we are getting the response. If we want to trace, right, in which order this microservices is executing, right? Then what concept we will use? Distributed tracing, right?
Distributed tracing.
Distributed tracing,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So After then what is that? If we want to find the log line, right? Log line, right? Log line means what? In the microservices, right? What is the failing in which we are generating one log file or not, guys? Come on. For the
Yes,
so
Ravi.
so if we want to find out, right, the log lines, right, then for that purpose what concept we will use it now? Distributed
Distributed tracing.
distributed tracing concept, right? Distributed tracing concept. So now fine now, guys. So distributed tracing is used for what is the purpose? Then what we can say that if anybody is asking what is that distribute distributed tracing is used used for what is that? Used for what? Finding. Used for what? Find out. What is that? Find out exception. Exception order, right?
Yes, Ravi.
Exception order of what is that? Microservices.
Uh,
Microservices for a request.
Execution order.
request
Execution order.
request find out exception order of a microservices for request. Means what is that? We are making the request now. In between, if any microservices is failing, then how we can trace it? How we can trace it? How we can find out, right? So that one only I'm writing, right? After then what? After then what?
Okay.
Next is what? So if we want to find out the path of this microservices, right? If we are if we want to take what is that, how much time this microservices is taking to execute, how much time this microservices is taking to execute. For that purpose what we are using? Distributed tracing concept we are using, right? So find time
Distributed tracing.
time taken. Find out time taken for what is that? For a path or exception, right? Path or exception. Path means what? We are making the request. This is the one path only na, guys. In between, if any
Yes,
exception is
Ravi.
there, if in between any exception is there, right? So we will find out how much time is taking. This path is how much time is taking. If any exception is there, that exception, how much that exception is taking the time. Everything I will show as a practical, guys. Okay, everything I will show it was as a practical only, right? As a practical only. So now, okay, after then what is that? After then we will find out the logging. In if we are implementing one log activity, someone is asked one day, right, how we are writing the log messages in the file. Now guys, today I'm going to implement it. Already I completed that concept, but again if that person is there in the session, please focus on the session. Today I'm going to implement again those things, right? Today I'm going to implement those things again. You will see that I will not teach, but that concept I'm going to implement now today. I don't know, someone is there now? I think last weekend only that person is asked that question na? Pushpendra, you remember that person?
No, Ravi.
But this question is asked, right? How we are storing our what log messages in what? In the data, sorry, in the file or database, right? So you will see today, right? Now, okay, now find what is that? Find what is that? find find log file, right? Find log file lines order, right? Find log files order. So now let's design one what diagram, right? Diagram. Based on that diagram we will do what? We will do our practical. So everyone is ready to see that one now, guys? Come on.
Yes, Ravi.
So
Execution order also
Yes,
will
Ravi,
be
ready.
fine.
yeah, based on that everything I will cover in that one only, right? Everything only
Yes.
I will cover in that.
Okay.
Yeah. So just what is that, just assume that we have what, we have what, 3 microservices. These microservices only we will develop, right? So we have what, 3 microservices. We have 3 microservices, right? 3 microservices. Microservices 1, microservices 2, microservices 3, microservices 1, right? We have 3 microservices, right? We have what, 3 microservices. Okay, good. So we are making the request here. What we are doing now, we are making the request now. And here what is that, response. We are making the request. We are making the request. Here we are getting the response. Okay, good. So after then what we are doing now, after then what we are doing now, we are implementing some logs. We are implementing some logs in the project, right? Log lines. Just assume that this is the log lines, right? Log lines. This is the log lines 1. This is the log line 1. Let's make the later small text. Yeah, this is log line 1. After then what, after then what, here we are writing some codes, right? Here we are writing some codes. Here we are writing some code, right? After then what is that, just assume that this is the log line. Log line, this is the log line 2. Log line 2. This is log line 2. Okay, fine. Now here what is that, here log line, log line, this one is a log line 3. Again we are writing some code here, right? Again we are writing here some code. After then here what is that, log line, log line 4. Again here what, log, 1 minute, leave it, log dot line, this is the 5. Log line 5, right? Yeah, here what is that, here also some code. We are writing some code. Now again log line, log line 6, right? Log line 6 is there. Okay, so now, okay, so what is that, what is that, now we need to trace it, right? We need to trace these things, right? So here what is that, first what will happen now, first whenever we will make the request, it first log line 1 execute, log line 1 execute. After then what, then this code will execute, right? Then this microservices will execute, right? Our this microservices, our target is what, this microservices will execute. After then what, log line 4 will execute. After then this microservices code will execute. After then what, after then this microservices will execute. This microservices will execute, right?
Yes, Ravi.
After then what will happen now, this microservices code will execute. Then what will happen now, then this microservices code will execute. After then what is that? This log line 6 will execute. After then request will come to this microservice, this microservices again, this microservices again, this microservices again. Now then what is that? Log line 4 will execute. After then what will happen now? After then what will happen now? Then request will come to whom? This microservices, right? After then what? Request will come to whom? This microservices. After then log line 4 will execute. After then what? We will get the response now. We will get the response now, right? So for that purpose, what we will do it now? Every microservices will be, we will use what is that? Log file, right? Log file. We will store the data, like what is that? If error, exception, all those things we will store in the log file, right? So just assume that a log I'm taking, a log file I'm taking, right? A log file. People are feeling bored. People are feeling bored.
No.
Yeah.
No, Ravi.
So yeah, so now for that purpose, just one, this microservices is there na. For this microservices, line 1 and line 2 is there na. This log messages we will store in the, in this file now, in this file now, guys. Okay. After then what? After then what? Let's make these microservices, and these microservices we will make the common log file, right? We will make the common log file. So we will take this log file name is what? B dot log, right? B dot log. Fine now, guys. Okay, good. So B dot log, here what will happen now? This microservices will be data, right? Sorry, log messages will store in this log file. This microservices log messages will store in this file only, right? After then what? This one, for this microservices we will take what? One particular log messages, right? But the thing is, guys, okay, so if we want to monitor, right, if we want to monitor in the project, right, if we want to monitor in the project, right, this is the log files are there, right? This is the log files are there. But what is that? Our need is what? Our need is what? To monitor how much time this microservices is taking to executing. If any, if in between, in the path, right, in the path if any microservices is failing, then we will monitor it, which microservices is failing. If it's failing, how much time it's taking, right? We will monitor that path, right? We will monitor that path. So for that, if we want to monitor that these things, right, if we monitor these things, right, so for that purpose, what is that means what? Actual things, right? What is the happening, like path and time and order, right? Path, what is the path? Request path. Time, how much time each microservices is taking to executing, right? And what is the path of each microservices, if we want to find out these things, right? So this information is storing, one person is there. That person name is what? Sleuth. What is the person name? Sleuth, right? Sleuth.
Sleuth.
Yeah.
Yes,
in
Ravi.
the sleuth what we are doing now? In the sleuth we are storing all tracing information, right? We are storing all tracing information about the microservices.
Okay, Ravi.
Sleuth, right? Yes, EUTS, sleuth, right? After then what? This microservices we are storing in the another sleuth, because every microservices have what is that? Sleuth memory. Sleuth. Here also one sleuth will be there. One sleuth will be there, right? One sleuth will be there. Inside that sleuth, what is that? All tracing information will be stored. All microservices means what? One particular microservices information will be storing now in this sleuth only, right? How much time this microservices is taking to store? What is the path request? What is the path request? If any exception is there, that information also will store in the sleuth memory, right? In the sleuth only. After then what? After then what? If right one, then okay, sleuth na here the 1 minute. Yeah, in the sleuth memory. But what? How we can check it? How we can check it, right? How we can monitor those things? For that purpose, what is that? One client is there. What is that? One client is there. What is the client? No, sorry. Who the exposing in the sleuth memory, right? From the sleuth memory, I need to expose. Then we can read. We can see those information na. We can see those information, guys. Come on, someone
Yes,
is there.
sir.
Until unless, just assume that in your home, let's take one particular name only, right? So after a long time onward, our Sudhir is joining our session. Let's take his name only. So just assume that in the Sudhir house something is happening, right? Something is happening. And just until unless, if the Sudhir is not exposing what's going on in his home outside, then outside people know that. No na. Until unless he is
No,
not
sir.
exposing, right? Until unless he is not exposing his house, his home, what things is happening internally, then anybody is understanding anything? Anybody is knowing those things? No na. Come
No,
on.
Ravi.
No na.
No,
No, Ravi.
no.
No, so same like the whatever things is happening, right? In the microservices, all those things is storing in the sleuth memory. Sleuth memory. But what is that? But what is that? From the sleuth memory, one more person will come, right? Who? What is that person name? Zipkin. That person name is what? Zipkin, right? Zipkin client is there. Zipkin client, what the Zipkin client is doing? Zipkin client is reading all information, whatever information is stored, right, related to microservices in the sleuth memory. Zipkin client is reading those data, right? Zipkin client is what?
Yes, Ravi.
Reading those data, reading those data. Then what is that? Then what is that? After then what? After then he is collecting the data. That collection of data is nothing but what we are saying, that simpler. What is that? Simpler. We are saying that data is nothing but what? Simpler. And from the simpler, Zipkin server is there, right? Zipkin server is there. Now let's understand again. So if we want to expose, right, then what is that? If we want to expose this data, means what? To read someone else means some other person, right? Some other person. Then what is that? Who's one more person is came, right? One more person is came, right? That person name is what? That person name is what? Zipkin person, right? Zipkin client, right? Zipkin client. That person name is what? Zipkin client. Zipkin client, right? Zipkin client. That person name is what? Zipkin client. What is the Zipkin client is doing? This Zipkin client is taking the all information, one particular microservices information, and storing inside that. Storing inside that. And this one only is exposing our data to whom? To read someone else, outsider people. To read someone else. What is that? Outsider people. Okay. So fine now guys, so after collecting this information, right, if we want to expose it, means what, some other person will come, right, some other person will come, right. So Zipkin server is there, right, Zipkin server also, where we will see that how much time one microservices is taking, means we are tracing that, right, how much time, what is the path, and how much time is taking, which microservices is failing. We are observing those things using, what is that, we are observing those things using what, using what,
Zipkin server.
Zipkin server, right?
Zipkin server.
Yeah,
Yes, brother.
Zipkin server, Zipkin server, and this Zipkin server is giving one UI, right? One UI. On that UI, what we can monitor it? We can find the, path. We can find the path, how much time one microservices is taking to execute, what is the id of what, that microservices, what is the id of that microservices, right. So now after then how we are enabling, right, how we are enabling data, right, how we are enabling Zipkins, right. One, what is that, using, what is that, means collecting the data, how we are collecting the data from the different Zipkins, different Zipkin client. We are enabling